So this is interesting. We've opened up another track of non-turning point turning points. Are there any others of those?
I think probably being appointed at RMIT as chaplain at the end of 1967. I had lunch today with a guy who rang me up on New Year's Eve at the end of 1967 and said, "Congratulations on being appointed to your new job." And I said, "Really? Oh, they haven't told you yet. I'll ring you in a day or two." So he rang in a day or two, by which time I knew that I had a letter from the Archbishop saying, "I've appointed you as chaplain at RMIT, as foundation chaplain at RMIT, with all the rights and privileges thereof," whatever that meant. I never found out. And he knew it from somebody on the inside. There'd been a push to get a chaplain at RMIT. He was then SRC president. He'd been part of that push. He'd been told that the appointee is Brian Bainbridge. He's currently assistant priest at West Preston, and all that sort of stuff, which is where he found me. And I still have lunch with him very often.
How was it a non-turning point, turning point?
It's something I knew nothing about, something that happened to you, assisting for a turning point that I had some say or sway in. Right. Some of the other turning points were things that sort of were partly me responding or whatever. It was something that was done to me or for me or whatever it is, in that sense at least.
Yep.
I left school at the end of year 12. I didn't have a successful year 12. I'd been sent in 1953 to England as a representative of Australia to the coronation. That really took 6 months out of year 11. And I didn't really settle all that readily into the exams at the end of year 11 and didn't do very well. I should have repeated year 11, I suppose, maybe, whatever.
What does that mean?
Just scraped through the exam classes. And whereas previously I'd been a straight A student and all that kind of stuff, or whatever. I've never recovered that, by the way. At the end of year 12, I really just made it through in what was then called matriculation. And the people at the school, the teachers at the school, figured I should go back into another year 12. And that would then get me for sure into a Newman Scholarship or a university scholarship. And we were working class. There was no way my parents could afford to. And I was the eldest kid, and there were 4 following on. So there was no way parents could afford anything beyond survival, and it was a struggle. It was always a struggle for my mum and dad. And they were working class and worked hard all their lives. But so it wasn't possible to repeat year 12. So I decided I'd join the public service. I ended up in the Department of Civil Aviation, as it was then, in Melbourne, the Federal Department. I worked there for 4 years, had a ball, enjoyed life hugely, was part of the parish structure, musical comedy stuff, and dances every Sunday night, and balls at the Palais de Dance and in St Kilda, and I think I don't know if I had 1 or 2 girlfriends over that period of time. Maybe, I can't remember. I can. But there was I did a bit of study at Melbourne in law part-time, and it really didn't turn me on, and I never actually finished the year properly at all. Then I went to RMIT to do public administration, and that was boring to the nth degree. I was having much too nice a time without all that stuff. And so there was no heart in it, there was no fire in it. In the end of after that, in that 4th year, which would have been 1958, I suppose, somehow or other something else came along into my head and said there's something else for you to do. And that message has come again and again and again ever since, and it's still there. But the something else was to sort of, not to become a priest, but to go to the seminary to see if you can become a priest. That was the contract. I don't know who the contract was with. It was only one-sided contract, I think. But anyway, the message that was in my head was that I had to try and see if priest thing was what I was supposed to be. And there was a rule: you could be thrown out if you're not suitable. you know, if they decided you weren't suitable, well, then that was all right. Then you've given it a go. Right? Again, I don't know where the rule came from, but it was there. And the sub part of the rule was that I couldn't do something and get myself thrown out. I couldn't do something that would get me thrown out, misbehave or skip over or do. So I was a fairly well-behaved young man, sort of, I suppose. And, it got close to being thrown out twice. And
just for doing what you normally do.
Yeah.
Not by trying to get through.
No, just doing what I thought was okay and probably bending the rules or something like that. And the boss man in the seminary, a fellow named McInerney, said, I think you should consider whether you should stay or not. I said, well, that's easy, I'm staying. He says, no, I want you to think about it and pray about it until the end of next week, and I want you to come and see me again. And at each time I came back to him and he said, well, I said, well, I'm staying. He said, well, yes, I thought that's probably what you'd decide. And he wasn't joyful about that at all. At least if he was, he didn't show it. The net result is that I made it through the 8 years of study and was ordained. And I think it's probably what I was meant to be. I can't think of being other things. You know, I've dabbled in academic world. I don't think I'd like living in that part of the world. Living as a full-time person, dabbling in it, yes, I'm pleased about that. I dabbled in the business world. I don't think I'd be happy in that world. I mean, if I had to be, I'm sure I'd find a way. But I think this has left me a lot more leeway and a lot more doing my thing. The guys that I was ordained with, we had a 25-year gathering of some kind. After 25 years, I don't know when that was. I think it's only one of 2 reunions I've ever been to. I'm not good at those things and I don't like them. But anyway, they made speeches about the people around the table, and there were only about 12 or 13 of us left out of the 23 or something that had been ordained. The others had disappeared. And said, well, we always knew that you had a master plan and that you'd do your own thing no matter what, and you've done exactly that. They were about 100% away from what the reality was for me. I never, and still don't have, a master plan of any kind, except to do what seems optional at the time, and that's that self-organising, what we would now call self-organising systems that seem to me the real way to live, and not the kind of big structured plan and stuff accordingly. And I'm more than happy with the way that's worked out. So it doesn't answer your question about why I went to priesthood, but I didn't get thrown out. So that's how I managed to survive, or managed to. And it's not that I set out not to get thrown out, but I didn't set out to get thrown out either. And that was the rules. And, I don't know whose rule, but it somehow happened. Yeah. So that was all those times.